Usually people from Europe go off somewhere hot on holiday, but this year, loads of people from somewhere hot tried to come over here.
You've got a swarm of people coming across the Mediterranean, seeking a better life.
Normally I think fair enough, but when I read the papers, you could tell from the language they used that these weren't quite normal people. I mean, they look normal on the telly, but when you read about them, you realise they must have had insect DNA or something, because it sounded like there were sort of infestations swarming in.
They couldn't have been real humans because people were writing things about them that would be utterly unforgivable if they were.
The people said there were migrants coming here in droves, which is interesting because I've never heard of a country called Migratia, and I don't know what a drove is. The migrants couldn't hack it back home just because they're caught in a crossfire between a bloodthirsty extremist death cult and a desperate, amoral military regime, both of which will stop at nothing to kill anyone in their way. But we've all got problems. I mean, I don't always like where I live, but you don't hear me moaning about it and hopping on a drove.
The coverage made it crystal clear they were headed for Europe because they wanted a better way of life, with benefits and a health service and houses that weren't all on fire or made of rubble. While they were waiting for the free house and money, the migrant swarms would build a sort of nest called a camp. The BBC did a special Songs of Praise from one of the nests, and the papers weren't happy. And nor was I. Songs of Praise is meant to be a music show, so why is it suddenly getting all preachy about things?
Anyway, just as I was really getting into hating the migrants, there was a massive twist that I hadn't seen coming.
When the police arrived here this morning, they found several drowning victims. Among them, a toddler, a child of perhaps 2 years of age.
This boat sank and there was a photo of a little boy lying dead on the beach, and he looked just like a real human, because he was. And then I thought, wait a minute, what if they're all real humans? And then I thought, oh my God, that'd be awful. I mean, if that was true, this whole thing would be an unprecedented crisis. And to their credit, after that photo, the papers did some investigating and found out the migrants were real people, so their coverage totally changed. They realised they got it wrong, so they started shouting at David Cameron to do something about it, to give them a home.
Today I can announce that we will do more, providing resettlement for thousands more Syrian refugees.
I feel sorry for him, because he'd only just found out they were humans too, you know. Everyone was caught in the op here.
The news had all this footage of them all desperately squeezing onto trains and marching on foot in huge snaking columns. But now it looks sort of different, less swarmy and threatening, and more harrowing and urgent and sad. And the clever thing was, it was the same sort of pictures you'd seen earlier, but now you knew the twist about them being humans. It seemed totally different. It was like the white and gold dress. Once it's flipped to blue and black in your head, that's it. You can't see it any other way forever. Well, until Paris happened. Then they went back to being a swarm of bastards and criminals again. In TV, Sunday night is big drama night. People like to watch drama on a Sunday night because they're all fucked out after a hard day going round B&Q or MFI or one of those big boots you get. Anyway, at the moment, there's these two big Sunday dramas going head to head. One of them's called The Casual Vacancy. It's like Midsummer Murders without the murders, or An Archers You Can See.
The other big drama was this sort of foreign film one. It was like this Ann Summers programme all about these sort of Downton Abbey people on holiday in India.
It was like a cowboy film, but the Indians were like Britain Indians, not cowboy film Indians. And the cowboys were all dressed like Fred Astaire. So it was like a posh cowboy film, even when there was a shootout.
Usually in Indian films, it's all normal. And then they suddenly do all singing with the sound levels turned too high, so it goes distorted and dancing around like they've gone mental. But in this, that bit never happened.
It was really orange. Like, I think someone had spilled orange on the tapes after they'd filmed it. And it had all plants and trees everywhere, like a posh garden or a flower show, or a really big salad with people living in it.
All the British people are doing something called a Raj, which is bossy and racist, and the Indians don't like it.
We demand full independence!
Probably because it's being done in their country. They probably wouldn't mind if the British people stayed in Britain and did a Raj there. Basically, a Raj is one of those things you should do in your own home, not in someone else's. like hangover shit.
It looked really hot, which is probably why it was sort of slow and woozy. Like, sometimes the actors fell asleep and couldn't be arsed getting up even though the scene was on.
Mr. Army Sahib.
Wakey, wakey.
It made India look amazing. I've always wanted to go, and this was like going there without being asked, which is clever. Anyway, both these programmes are on Sunday night. I've got them on Series Link. I don't watch TV on a Sunday night because I go to bed early, and not my own either, because I'm in a loving relationship with someone who respects me for who I am. I've never been so happy. Thanks for asking.
A few years ago, everyone in the world was loaded and into this sort of bling stuff. But then the computers crashed and all the money was deleted. So now there's nowhere near as much as there was. It mainly affected money outside the banks because they'd backed most of theirs up, so they could still print it out on banknotes. But the rest of us have to do austerity until our money comes back, which is taking ages. Basically, with austerity, you spend less on stuff you don't need, like art installations or pavements. Not everyone's into it, like the disabled keep moaning about the benefits being taken away, but they can still make money by doing Paralympics or getting mugged outside their own home.
It's hard to care about austerity because it's not like a tornado or an explosion where you can see pictures of it on the news and go, oh dear, that's their lives ruined, and then rewind it and watch it again. Austerity is sort of invisible, like a gas, but a gas that kills money. And there's not much to show on the news except things that are closed or sort of maths things or food banks, which are like NatWest for peas.
Oxfam says the wealthiest 1% will soon own more than the rest of the world's population.
I suppose it's a bit gutting seeing the 1% people put up the nice tall pointy buildings while everyone else is sort of coughing to death in knackered old hospitals on the ground. But with a lot of the 1%ers, it's not their fault they're in the 1%. They were just born there. They've literally done nothing to put themselves in the 1%, so picking on them is literally the same as racism.
Since the money crisis began, loads of European countries have been skint, but Greece, right, got totally skint. So basically, Germany lent them loads of money, like Wonga, but in German, which is Vonga. The Greek economy had to undergo IMF treatment and do tons of austerity, like really austerity the fuck out of itself. After a while, they didn't want to keep up the repayments, so they invented a new government who didn't believe in money.
There's uncertainty in Europe tonight after Greece voted in an anti-austerity government.
After the Greeks stopped believing in money, the Spanish stopped believing in it too. And now the Eurozone people are worried everyone might stop believing in it and it'll disappear and we'll have to barter with like sticks or like, I don't know, handfuls of soil instead of using bank cards, which would be tragic because they've only just invented that contactless payment thing.
They said austerity left Greece devastated, but it's hard to tell because the footage was all people sitting around and things looking a bit half-finished and political graffiti on the walls, which is what Greece looked like anyway back in 2002 when I went there with my mate Paul. He fell off a scooter and took all the skin off his palms. That's not relevant, but it stuck in my head and I don't think the sight of it will ever leave me, to be honest.
There's this Oscars thing Hollywood does to celebrate the best films ever made, as long as they were made recently. It's really exciting to watch. The coverage of it was amazing. I mean, it's got loads of famous people in it, so it's like a film, but better because it doesn't have the boring story bit.
It was exciting this year because two of our actors were up against each other, Eddie Redmayne and Benelin Thundercrack. They both played geniuses, but different flavoured geniuses in these incredible-looking films. One of them played this sort of computer genius and looked a bit like Sherlock Holmes.
You need me a lot more than I need you. I like solving problems, Commander.
He was so good at computers, he did hacking before computers were real. He had to make a big computer out of bits of typewriter and spinny power station things, and it was so powerful it killed Hitler. He was called Alan Turing, and the authorities persecuted him because he was gay. Then they drew a veil over it, which is where the phrase Turing Shroud comes from. And the other one played this sort of Austin Powers man called Steve Hawking, who got cleverer and cleverer until he turned into a sort of robot.
Anyway, Eddie Fing won, which was just amazing to see.
Thank you. Thank you.
People said it was sort of annoying them two got nominated. It proves acting's just for posh people now. But you can still act without being posh. You just have to do different roles. Like my mate Paul pretended to be in a neck brace for 6 months to get money from a car insurance company, and he won an award after he'd gone to court. What's clever about the Oscars is it isn't just an actors' competition, it's also about films. Like, it had all these different films that wanted to be the best film, but only one of them could.
The best films showed all the different things you can make films about, because there's one about a man, and one about a man, and one about a man, and one about a boy turning into a man. And people said the films were all a bit manny, but there aren't any good films about women, except Mrs. Doubtfire. And even then they couldn't find a woman to play Mrs. Doubtfire and had to get a man in.
One of the favourites to win was this film called Boyhood, which was really clever. It was like 12 Years a Slave, but he was 12 years a boy. Being a boy didn't look as bad as being a slave, but he still had to do stuff when people told him to.
Put that homework in your backpack. Go eat.
The main actor was amazing because he played a boy and played a man, and he played all the bits in between. It was so interesting. He was like a slow-motion Hulk, getting bigger, but really slowly. The special effects were amazing. You could almost believe it could actually happen in real life.
There was one called Whiplash. It was like the Karate Kid done in drums.
You're rushing. Here we go. 5, 6, and...
It's probably the best film there's been about drumming since that brilliant one where the little rabbit wins the battery competition.
There was a sort of made-up documentary type thing called American Snipper about a hero who bravely hid miles away, peeping through a telescope and valiantly killing people who couldn't possibly hurt him from where they were standing.
People said it glorified killing, but it didn't glorify all killing, only far away killing, which isn't as bad because you don't get any on your shoes.
One of the films was called Big Bucharest Hotel. It's sort of like Hello, Hello, the movie. It was set in a sort of painting and looked like the sort of thing you'd have to physically hold me down and force me to watch. And even then, I'd be trying to forget it while it was happening. There was one called Birdman, which is about a superhero pretending to be an actor, or the other way around. Or both. I don't know, because I didn't see it because it wasn't showing at the cinema near me, because every screen at the cinema near me has just been showing Iron Man 3 on a loop for the past 400 years. And in the end, that one won.
Birdman.
Anyway, I hope they make more films so they can do another Oscars next year, but maybe less of them so it doesn't last so fucking long.
There was this Broadchurch programme about a tragic killing that happened in the first series and got totally solved. So it didn't really need to be on, but it was on anyway. I think that's why everyone in it looked really fucking miserable.
What's clever is it's the same murder again, and it's sort of hard to do a murder show again because we know who done it. So for the new series, they actually dug up the victim from the first series in case the murderer wanted to do it again.
My boy is in there! You! Why can't you let him rest, eh?
I hope they do a third series of Broadchurch about another murder that's already happened, but a famous one, like Shergar or the shooting of Tupac Shakur.
There was a lot of staring out into the ocean. You know, they were probably worried another murderer might come in by boat, or someone might try to kill the sea.
Even though it's got all death and grieving in it, it's bright and lovely and sort of Instagram looking, like an advert for Flora or Cadbury's Flake. So it's dark, but also colourful, like Mr. Motivator. People said it's got loads of factual errors in it, and they've got a point, like, there's this one woman with a terrible wig. It doesn't look like her hair at all. It's not even the same colour. And it's not just her, there's loads of them. Whoever did the wigs was mental. And there was this really stupid bit where a dog opened a door.
There's loads of crying in it. Because there isn't a new murder, I think it's about a sort of crying disease that makes people leak water from the face. And it's really contagious because everyone starts doing it. And it's not just face water. Like, one of them totally sprung a leak from a front bum out in the street.
See what you've done?
And then she kept going till tons of water was coming out. And if they don't find a cure, everyone in Broadchurch is going to drown.
There's all these people and you're not sure who's suspicious and who isn't. Like, there'd be someone who sort of looked kind, but then the programme would subtly imply they might be evil, like really subtly. In Broadchurch 1, the mystery was who's the murderer, but in Broadchurch 2, it's what's the point, which is an even bigger mystery. I can't wait to find out what it is. Sort of library channel where the BBC keep their old man music programmes, and it had this amazing detective thing called The Bridge on it. It's a bit like Sherlock, which is brilliantly made, but instead of it being about a hobbit and a wizard, it's about a sort of giant and a robot woman. He's sort of angry and she's sort of distant, but if you put them together, they sort of balance out and make one person.
It was a bit weird because it had George Galloway in it, and Dennis Wortman, and like Stuart Lee, but younger and less funny.
Hanging on though.
But they were all foreign them, not real them.
It's about these crimes that are happening miles away, but are still exciting, so you still sort of care. And just like Sherlock, it's got these clever words that come up, so you know what's happening. Like, each time someone speaks, it explains what's going on. Sometimes there were words telling you what they'd said, even though you knew what they'd said, because they'd said it using real words anyway.
For fuck's sake. It's hard concentrating on the word bits with all the picture bits at the top. I think maybe the way to do it is to watch it once for the words and then again for the pictures.
The man policeman's Danish and the woman policeman's Swedish, but even though they speak two different languages, they don't need subtitles to talk to each other because they're both foreign. So, like, even though I need subtitles to understand them, they wouldn't need subtitles to understand me because to them, I'm foreign, which they are too.
They're trying to catch these, like, Beatrix Potter people who are killing people to make a trendy point about politics to impress The Guardian. It feels really new because, as well as the robot one, it's got YouTube in it and computers, you know, and a bit where a man's having sex with someone. And if you look, you can see his balls for, like, no reason.
Thing is, it's not a nice foreign land like in a holiday programme. It's really cold and there's all murders. And you can tell from looking at it that there's hardly any colours allowed over there because the light burns the fjords, so everything's grey and murky and muted and sort of ominous. It's probably less depressing being murdered in Scandinavia than anywhere else on Earth because even as you were dying, you'd think, oh well, at least it'll be warm in heaven and they'll let me wear red trousers if I want. And they probably speak English like in proper places.
The first series of The Bridge was really good. So they made it again over here as The Tunnel, which was really good as well. And to make it a fair swap, the Danish remade Take Me Out, and theirs was just as good as ours was. In fact, actually sort of better because it's happening further away.
The One Show usually has these guests, like someone off Waterloo Road or a bloke who knows shitloads about the history of tarmac. But the other day, there was this bald bloke on, and I was across the room, and I thought, oh, it's Jesper Carrot. Maybe they're doing Golden Balls again. But it wasn't Jesper Carrot, it was Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis, right, had done this film called A Good Day to Die Hard, and it had this brilliant trailer full of like amazing things happening, like explosions and more explosions, which is brilliantly done. All the fire looks hot and everything.
Hardly anyone seemed to have seen this Die Hard 5 thing till just before it came out. It was like the film people were keeping it secret, so no one could spoil it for you by saying, hey, it's brilliant, just before you paid to see it. But Matt Baker and Alex Jones had seen it, and they obviously loved it because they kept telling Bruce Willis it was great.
And it is absolutely incredible. You've raised the bar as far as action movies are concerned.
Bruce Willis seemed sort of humble about how good he knew the film was. Like he could hardly talk about it, it was so humble.
And it has that Die Hard oomph to it, so...
Seriously, he was so torn up with pride, he just had to look at the floor and hardly say anything. Like when they asked if his daughters had seen it.
Have the girls seen the film?
Like you could see in his eyes, he was really proud of this film. The exciting looking film where he machine guns all the terrorists for like the 5th time, which looks brilliant. He's managed to make the same film 5 times without dying on the inside. or looking like he doesn't really have much enthusiasm for the whole fucking thing anymore and he just wishes it would stop. That's not what he looks like.
Matt Baker, right, introduced a clip from Moonlighting, and you could tell Bruce was excited.
A lot of people will remember you from Moonlighting back in '85. It kind of launched you, didn't it? Let's just remind ourselves for all those that may have forgotten. Here we go.
Moonlighting looked brilliant, sort of effervescent, like full of life, but not as good as the new film that looks amazing with all the stuff that blows up and the exciting shooting and everything, and all the computerised pictures where everything explodes and the big writing and the banging and the booming sounds. In terms of noise alone, it's probably the best film ever. Later they mentioned Bruce's singing career when he did Under the Boardwalk, and he was chuffed they brought that up.
You should sing Under the Boardwalk.
Oh, well...
They showed a bit of it, actually, all that entertaining footage of him singing these classic songs in front of some black blokes in the 80s. It was great. Not as great as the film he's done, that looks really incredible with all the helicopters and the death in it, obviously because that's amazing. Then he sort of made a sound with a harmonica and got a nice round of applause. And I thought, oh, he must have overcome something. That's why they're being nice. Good for you, Bruce. Hope the film makes loads of money. I really do, because it looks good, that film, with all the amazing explosions and the shooting in it and the helicopter and everything. And then him killing people, like really killing lots of people with guns, like people with mums and dads in histories. And he just mows them all down because they're sort of bad, probably. I don't know, I haven't seen it. But I expect they are, otherwise he's a fucking murderer. There was this programme called Wonderful Life that was about how science did all the life. It was like this holiday thing where Mark Owen, out of Take That, goes around the world and looks at things like he's on an album cover or one of his unpopular solo projects. And it's all a lovely holiday, but then something goes wrong.
You notice he's on his own and he looks like he's thinking, and you're like, oh, this is trouble. You know, it can spin you out being alone in a strange place. And sure enough, he starts saying all this moody stuff.
What is it that makes something alive? What is the difference between the living and the dead? What is life?
When my friend Paul went to Thailand, he had a bad pill and ended up crying and trying to run into the sea for 3 weeks. And this is just like that. It's like he's had a bad pill. He walks around all night through a sort of burning graveyard until he starts sounding all stoned and depressed.
It's hard to accept that when you die, you will just stop existing, and that you are your life. The essence of you is just really something that emerges from an inanimate bag of stuff.
That's when his mind totally snaps, and he spends the rest of his holiday spiralling out of control. He starts building all these weird machines out of bottles and stuff.
Actually works.
The stuff he says gets madder and madder until you're like, someone's got to step in and get this bloke some help. It's not right. It's just exploitation filming him like this.
The chicken is radiating disorder out into the wider universe.
And it's sad because he really wants you to understand what he's on about, because he doesn't know it's pointless.
Then he starts peeking and has all these crazy man visions where he sees like the whole galaxy in his head, and he describes all this hippie stuff.
Just by being alive, we too are part of the process of energy transformation that drives the evolution of the universe.
And then he looks calm and you realise he thinks he's found the meaning of life. And so even though he's past help, you think, fair enough, mate, good for you. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. Try not to run into the sea. There was this online craze thing called the Harlem Shake. It was sort of like something that Alex Zane introduces clips of in 18 months' time, but now and on the internet.
You go to YouTube and put in Harlem Shake, and you'd see like a big room, and it'd have all these people in it, and none of them were doing anything apart from like one person who was sort of dancing a bit. And then the music would go all excited, and suddenly everyone was dancing like they were crazy.
and do the Harlem Shake.
It was literally that amazing. It's better than Gangnam Style because Gangnam Style looks better, but it's harder to do. Like with Harlem Shake, you don't have to learn anything, you just sort of go like that. It's brilliant.
Everyone's really flailing around, which is funny, and they're wearing silly things, which is funny as well. People say Stuart Lee's funny, but he's never done anything as funny as that, and he never will. Once you'd seen one video, right, you had to see another. And the good thing was that everyone was uploading their own versions, right? So you got to see what it looks like when people in different rooms suddenly all dance. It was amazing. You'd see like a big room of people and then they'd all be dancing, which was fun. Or sometimes you'd see people all outside and they'd all be dancing, which was probably more fun. And then you'd see people in an old folks home and they'd all be dancing, which is funny because they're old. And then you'd see another one in an old folks home and you'd be like, okay, I've sort of seen that. Sometimes you'd see like all war men with guns and stuff and you'd hear the music and you'd think, no way they're going to do the mad dance. That'd be mental. But then, right, they do it anyway.
And do the Harlem Shake.
It shows even men who've been trained to kill and have been handed implements of death by the state still like to let their hair down. They could probably do it as a victory dance, like on the battlefield, over the bodies of people they've killed. And the music's quite loud, which would drown out the screaming.
And there were loads of people doing it in offices. And at first you're like, okay, oh, yeah, that's really funny, you know? But then after a while, you start thinking, hello, the economy's sinking? How exactly is this supposed to help? It's all well and good waving your arms around with a funny hat on, but at the end of the day, you've got a job to do. We all have. So pull your weight. Stop fucking dancing and get back to work, you selfish Harlem Shake bastards.
There was this exciting historical drama thing about these four sort of hat and beard men who had these lightsaber fights, except the lightsabers are made out of metal instead of electricity or whatever lightsabers are made out of. It's like a children's thing, but for adults. So it's like for adult children.
What was clever was they all looked a bit like the bloke off the Anonymous mask, so you never really know who was who. And to make it more difficult, they all had, like, code names. Like, they used names of Greek islands to protect their identity. So there was, like, Athos and Porthos and Aramis and, like, I don't know, Mowgli or something.
They're all quite good-looking. They're like men in a yoghurt advert. Like, if there was a woman in an office and her life's shit, but then it's a lunch break, so she opens a yoghurt and these sexy men appear and they're sort of exotic and her yoghurt's nice too, so she's happy. It's like that, but without the yoghurt.
You could tell by looking at it that it was historically accurated properly. Like, it had people from paintings in it and rooms with, like, really complicated ceilings. And, like, they didn't have lifts. So when they wanted to leave a building, they had to jump out of a window.
There was loads of sword fighting in it, and sword fights are strange because although they sort of look exciting, they never actually are. Like, when you think about what a sword fight is, you should be on the edge of your seat because it's like all sharp things. Like, once my mate Paul was slicing a pear at a festival with his penknife, and it was just unbearably tense to watch because he was really drunk and sort of cutting it in the hand he was holding it in, and I could hardly stand to watch that. But with sword fights, even though swords are bigger than penknives and they really wave them around, it's like a dance routine or a sort of metal squabble. So there's never this sort of same sense of danger there was with Paul and the pear.
What I liked was, because it had all the things you expect, like a bit where someone hides from a husband and a bit where a young bloke earns the respect of a slightly older bloke and a bit where someone's framed for murder because they picked up a knife and put a fingerprint on it and a bit where one of the main characters is going to die and you're like, oh my God, one of the main characters is going to die. But then the person who was going to kill them gets shot and it pulls focus and it's someone surprising who saved them. Because it had all that stuff, you already know, you didn't have to waste time working out what it was or what you thought about it, or like who these people were. You could just sort of look at it while your mind went into screensaver mode, and that proves it's good drama. There was this big politics competition in the middle of the year. It was sort of yuppie London ponce people against working class types. So basically just Blur versus Oasis again. I was told it was an in-out referendum, but when they gave me the actual ballot thingy, it said Remain Leave. So I was like, shit, now what? It was like a sort of quiz. I mean, there was no way I was going to vote Remain. I didn't want to be part of Romania. I don't even know where that is. I wanted us to stay in Europe, which is why I voted Leave, to leave things as they are. So I'm gutted we didn't win.
I voted Remain because someone told me if we left, they'd make spaghetti illegal. And I didn't want to have to end up paying a fortune for spaghetti from a dealer in a dodgy flat somewhere and then getting it home and finding out it was drinking straws or noodles or something.
Brilliant. Well, I've got Diane Morgan, a.k.a. Philomena Cunk. Presumably now, she could appear in every single BBC special. You've had Cunk on Shakespeare, you could have, Cunk on Punk, I think you suggested.
Yeah, Cunk on Punk. Why not? You could do Cunk on Modern Art, Cunk on Jane Austen. Apparently there's an anniversary coming up this year of her birth or death or something. The day she had her first, I don't know.
Do you think that Philomena, perhaps we should call her idiocy now is actually part of the mainstream? It's no longer kind of something that belongs to satire. It's in our political bloodstream.
I don't know. I think only about 6 people watch Weekly Wipe. There's still kind of a lot of people that haven't seen it. It's still quite cult.
And it's right to say that Philomena Cunk, she's called Philomena because she was originally imagined to be quite a posh.
Yeah, she was. They wanted to have someone posh as the talking head because they had Barry Shitpeas and they didn't want to look as if they were taking the piss out of the working classes.
Yeah.
But then I bowled in and said, I think it'd be much funnier if she had a Bolton accent like this.
What do you think Philomena Cunk would make of Donald Trump?
She probably likes his wife's dresses. I don't know.
What's your favourite Cunk line ever?
What is clocks? Surely that's the best line ever. People still shout it to me in the street.
I loved your comedy Motherland. I thought your character in particular of a really well written, really good ensemble. How are you getting on with that? Have the scripts been written? Where are you with that?
Well, apparently, I heard today actually that they've come up with storylines and now they're going to start writing it and it'll be filmed in June, July.
And your character, the sort of slatternly sort of mother, you aren't a mother, and would you ever become one?
No, I can't bear kids. I've never wanted them.
Is this serious?
I'm absolutely serious. I'm not joking. I've never wanted kids, and I can't see any advantages.
And are you channeling that into your character, who is, she's quite likable. She's probably the most likable character in...
Yeah, people say that she's quite likable. I didn't know what I was doing in that show, but hopefully people liked it. And,
I thought she was wonderful. Also, I read that you're starring in a new sitcom with Maxine Peake, who plays your...
That's completely wrong. I'm writing a sitcom for me and Maxine. It might go nowhere.
And is it about sisters?
It is about sisters. Twin sisters, yeah. Not identical, obviously. That would involve a lot of prosthetics.
And what is it about these sisters is there anything in particular about them that's sort of the setting? Or?
One of them is slightly uncouth.
That's your one, isn't it?
How did you know? One of them is a big famous actress.
Right, I see, yeah.
So they've sort of used real life there.